You're right, folks. Welcome back, and if you're new, it's nice to have you. Phase 4 of Wrath of the Lich King Classic is only a few days away, and with it, we will be seeing some pretty substantial changes to the game, and in some cases, for better or for worse, they will have an impact at every stage of Classic. I'm going to go over a few of the most noteworthy so that you are prepared for the events to come. So let's get into it. First up, then, the biggest of the big Shadowmourne. Blizzard have made significant adjustments to the acquisition of this highly sought after item. According to them, originally it could take on average anywhere between 18 to 24 weeks to get a single axe, and with these changes they state it should reduce that time significantly, down to 8 to 10 weeks, which is a much more palatable time frame and means we should be seeing a lot more shiny axes running around this time. To do this, they have changed the drop requirements for Shadowfrost shards required in the second to last stage of the chain. They now drop from the beginning and no longer require a player to be on that specific quest before they appear in the loot table, meaning you will be farming them as you work through the rest of the quest chain, which expedites the process exponentially. They have also increased the normal drop rate for the shards to be in line with that of the heroic drop rate, which I believe is somewhere around the 50%ish mark, making it a coin flip on whether or not the boss you kill drops one. And each Endwing boss is guaranteed to drop a single shard, meaning if you are full clearing on normal each week, that's a guaranteed 5, meaning you are guaranteed to have all 50 of the shards within a 10-week period, which is a massive improvement and a huge time saver. There is now also another way to get Primordial Sarenites, which is the raid crafting material of this patch, and 25 of which are needed for the axe. Originally, they were a drop, similar to the Runed and Crusader orbs of raids past, and they could also be purchased for badges. However, the cost was quite steep, 23 Emblems of Frost per Sarenite. It made getting past the first quest a challenge in and of itself unless you were willing to part with every penny in your coin purse. Now they can be purchased for 12 Defiler's Scourge Stones as well. This is the new currency that drops from the Titan Rune Gamma difficulty of Heroics, and this currency has a higher acquisition rate than the previous Sidereal Essences, as every boss killed drops them, not just a single essence from the final encounter. All told, this should reduce the pain of getting your Shadowmourne and actually give you some time to enjoy your new shiny before the next content update. In instances like this, Blizzard have said they want to prioritise fun over everything else, and I think that's fair. It's also worth stating that they said they might tweak the numbers again before launch, so it's not all set in stone, but broadly speaking, it shouldn't take your guild the better part of a year to get a single legendary. We will also see a new Collections tab. This is simply the Retail Collections interface pasted onto Classic. This includes pets, mounts, heirlooms, and toy items. Now, Blizzard have stated previously that this will include most of these items. I've speculated on what that could mean in the past, but I think it just boils down to the fact that the majority of your beloved shinies are fine, and you'll be able to access them on all characters. It'll only be the ultra rare, hardest of the hard status symbol collectibles that might remain character bound, which makes perfect sense to me at the end of the day. As I've said before, it looks a bit odd to see a level 20 running around on a Scarab Lord mount. But Yazilian Tigers, Rivendare's Chargers, Fiery Warhorses, etc. will all be accessible to characters with even the most basic riding skill. And on that, in a previous video, I mentioned that mounts kept their proper speeds regardless of a character's currently learned skill. However, this has now been corrected and all mounts scale to your current riding skill, as was the case in later expansions. But with that said, if you would like 10% flying speed, you still need to go and get one of the mounts with it, because that does not become a skill in its own right until later on in WoW's life. Heirlooms now function similarly to how they do in retail, not in regards to the buffs they provide, but how you access them. They're added to the tab and you simply just whip them out whenever you need them, so no more sending back and forth between characters. And yes, this is all account-wide, so when the patch hits, go through all your characters so that the game picks up on what mounts and heirlooms you've got, and then go rifle through your banks for those long-forgotten pets and vanity items hosting entire civilizations of dust mites, and stick them in your collections tab. Class changes. Now, this isn't for every class, and you may not think this is major, but trust me, if you've played a hunter up until now, it's Christmas come early. So, we'll start with the hunters then. You lovely chaps get a new ability called Trap Launcher Explosive Trap. This will allow you to fire your explosive trap at a location of your choice and allow for more consistent triggers. For those unaware, survival is the spec of the moment for hunters, with marksman coming in second. In both of these specs, one of the vital aspects is trap weaving. At its most basic, it consists of the hunter running in, dropping his trap under the boss, and running away again throughout the fight to benefit from the damage, because explosive trap does a hell of a lot. However, there are a lot of factors outside of the player's control when it comes to whether or not that trap gets triggered, and on fights where it's not feasible for hunters to run in and place a trap, their damage suffers greatly because of it. This will allow for more control of the trap's placement and allow for it to be done at range to prevent your hunter possibly running into something they shouldn't and getting sent to the realms beyond for their troubles. In doing so, this will help make hunter damage more consistent and less of a roll of the dice, and just allow for more skilled hunters to shine. Demo Warlocks will also see a couple of changes. There have been some significant alterations to Demonic's Pact, which should overall make things a bit better for the spec. The buff has had its internal cooldown reduced from 5 seconds to 1. Blizzard state this is to smooth out the optimal usage of the ability and to allow for Warlock pets to enter battle sooner. It has also been tweaked so that the buff is always 10% of the Warlock's spell power. Again, just there to smooth it out a bit and make it a more consistent ability. For all flavours of Warlocks then, your Infernal now resets its cooldown at the end of encounters, making it more similar to a Shaman's Fire Elemental or a DK's Army of the Dead. Enjoy summoning your Boulder Boys! And for Resto Shaman, Resto Druids, and Healing Priests, there have been some tweaks to your Smart Heal abilities, Wild Growth, Circle of Healing, Ancestral Healing, and Divine Hymn. The adjustment is small, with them now favouring players over pets. They can still land on pets, but in a situation where a player and a pet are similarly low in HP, it will favour the thing with the fleshy brain, not the one with the computer brain. On to Titan Rune Gamma, the latest in Blizzard's Titan Rune difficulty for Wrath Heroics. We've got the obligatory health and damage increases, and the affixes in place in beta still remain. So what is new then? Well, players can now trigger a variety of buffs that should make things more interesting. It feels like they took the feedback from the beta versions of Halls of Stone and Lightning and ran with it. They're putting more power in the player's hands to make the experience more fun overall, which, yeah, can't really complain, that's pretty decent. I will probably make a more in-depth video on this subject, like I did for the beta dungeons in a few weeks, as I have a holiday coming up not long after the patch launch, so won't properly be able to get into the damn things for a good fortnight. Blizz have also said that there have been no alterations to the drops, and that everything present in beta will continue to be in Gamma. Initially, I was a bit disappointed in this decision, because I would have expected, at the very least, 10-man TOGC normal. But after thinking about it, there really aren't that many items in TOGC, particularly when compared to the beast that is Ulduar. I just don't think there are enough items to spread around all the dungeons, so fair enough. But with that being said, and as I mentioned earlier, we do have a new currency, Defiler's Scourge Stones, and we get one of these from every boss killed and 2 from the final boss. The prices for items purchased with this currency are decidedly higher than that of the essences from beta. However, due to them dropping from every boss, it should make getting items with the Scourge Stones feel less like a chore, as did turn out to be the case for some of the higher ticket items purchased with essences. So, what can you actually buy with them? Well, you've got normal 25-man TOGC loot, so if you were one of the unlucky sods who didn't get their hands on a Death's Verdict or Reign of the Unliving, for example, you only need 38 Scourge Stones to buy the normal version, which is better than a kick in the teeth. And for alts, it's bloody fantastic. These are basically required items for later endgame, so it's nice to have a route to them. You'll also be able to buy some of the high-ticket Ulduar 25-man hard mode items. Now, this isn't every item, only rings, necks, trinkets and cloaks, and every hard mode item costs 60 Scourge Stones, so a bit higher than most of the normal TOGC loot. But you're buying Flare of the Heavens, Comet's Trail, so on and so forth, and for some classes and specs, those are bis right up until Wrath's final breath. You can also exchange Scourge Stones for Sidereal Essences on a 1-to-1, so it will make acquiring any 10-man Ulduar hard mode loot you need much easier as well. And to finish, LFG. Yes, the Dungeon Finder we all know and love, and in some cases to hate, will be making an appearance this phase with some additions. Now, I will be the first to say, I've never really wanted this feature in Classic. My reasons are the same as a lot of people. I actually enjoy the act of putting a group together and going to the dungeon and all of that. This cuts that out of the game near enough completely because it's efficient beyond measure. Why leave the comfort of your home city if all you have to do is press a button? However, with that said, it would appear I am perhaps one of the vocal minority on this because from what I've read and from what people have told me, a lot of folk are for it, so fair enough. And I do know that at least on my server it can be a bit of a pain in the neck finding a group for lower level content. Lower levels are fewer and farther between, so this will at least keep dungeons alive for the people leveling fresh alts, and even from the 70 to 80 bracket, I've personally had issues finding a dungeon on the last 2 characters I've leveled. So again, it should help with that particular issue. On to the additions then. You can actually queue for Titan Rune dungeons from this interface, so Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. The only thing that worries me about this is undergeared characters running straight into Gamma. Now, I made a template character on the PTR to check, as all my toons that are 80 are pretty decently geared, but those templates start with Dungeon Blues and maybe 1 or 2 normal heroic Dungeon Epics. Not amazing gear, but passable, what you might consider pre-raid bis for the first phase, and they were able to queue for Gamma. My worry stems from the fact we will see freshly dinged characters in greens and heirlooms jump straight into this, and if they're a DPSer, they might get away with it, but if you're playing a tank and you've just hit 80 and you jump into the theoretically hardest version of dungeon content, you're not going to be defense capped, and you've probably got less health than the hunter's pet. You will be slapped into oblivion, thus resulting in broken groups and a lot of angry people. With the group finder system we're currently using, there is a degree of screening in place. I'll admit it can sometimes go a bit far, but generally people are decent with it. If you're putting together a group for a beta dungeon and a guy asks to join, usually you'll ask for gear score or something along the lines of, what's your gear like? If they respond just dinged greens and heirlooms, you're not going to take them and you shouldn't have to. It's not down to you to boost and carry undergeared people you don't know and potentially wipe 2, 3, 4 times on something because the tank or healer or whatever cannot take the sheer punishment being thrown at them. There is no such screening for the LFG feature. In other expansions, there were eye-level requirements for different tiers of content accessible through Dungeon Finder. Wrath doesn't have an eye-level system in place, and gear score is player-created, so that doesn't help either. So at certain levels of the game, this feature will do wonders. At the highest end, though, I'm foreseeing quite sizable and frequent shitstorms, with freshly dinged 80s being paired with over-geared beefy bastards, and it not going well. If you're boosting a friend, or you yourself are a DPS player, at the end of the day, no one will notice too much, and it shouldn't really be the cause of any major issue. but it does mainly boil down to tanks and healers being quite possibly underprepared for this experience and being the cause of a lot of dungeon-based headaches because they're diving into content designed for a more geared player. But only time will tell. Anyway, those are 5 of the bigger changes coming to Phase 4 Wrath of the Lich King. Let me know what you think of them down below, and if there's anything that you would change. If you'd also be so kind as to like, sub, share with your pals, and so on, that'd be grand. Have a good one, folks, and I'll see you in ICC.